A very good evening to all. It's time for Children's Bedtime Treasury with Let Emotion Speak. Don't forget to like the video, share the video and subscribe to my channel. Tell me in the comments below how did you like the story. Today's story is about Rusty's Big Day. Long ago there lived a poor farmer called Fred who had a horse called Rusty. Once Rusty had been a good strong horse. He had willingly pulled the plough and taken his master into town to sell his vegetables. Now he was too old to work on the farm, but the farmer couldn't bear to think of getting rid of him because he was so sweet-natured. It would be like turning away one of my own family, Fred used to say. Rusty spent his days grazing in the corner of the field. He was quite content, but he felt sad that he was no longer able to help the poor farmer earn his living. One day, Fred decided to go to town to sell a few vegetables. He harnessed Beauty, the young mare, to the wagon and off they went. Beauty shook her fine mane and tossed a glance at Rusty, as if to say, "Look, who's queen of the farmyard?" While Fred was in the town, his eye was caught by a notice pinned to a tree. It said, "Horse parade at 2 p.m. today. The winner will pull the king's carriage to the grand banquet tonight." "There's not a moment to lose, my girl," said Fred. "We must get you ready for the parade." So saying, he turned the wagon around. "Giddy up, Beauty," he called, and she trotted all the way back to the farm. Fred set to work to make Beauty look more lovely than she had ever done before. He scrubbed her hooves and brushed her coat until it shone. Then he plaited her mane and tied it with a bright red ribbon. Rusty watched from the field. "How fine she looks," he thought wistfully. "She's sure to win." He felt a bit sad that he was too old to take part in the parade, so he found a patch of the sweetest grass to graze on to console himself. All at once, he heard Fred approach. "Come on, old boy," he said. "You can come too. It will be fun for you to watch the parade, won't it?" Rusty was thrilled. It seemed such a long time since the master had taken him out into the town. Fred brushed Rusty's coat too. "You want to look your best, don't you, old boy?" he said. Soon the three of them set off back into town, with Fred riding on Beauty's back and Rusty walking by their side. When they reached the parade ground, there were already a lot of horses gathered there with their own owners. There were horses of every shape and size, small, skinny ones, big, muscular ones, and there were even big, skinny ones too. Soon it was time for the parade to begin. The king entered the parade ground, followed by the members of the royal court. They took their places at one end of the ground. Then the king announced 3 contests. First, there would be a race. The horses would gallop from one end of the parade ground to the other. Then there would be a contest of strength. Each horse would have to try and pull a heavy carriage. Lastly, there would be a trotting competition. Each horse would have to carry a rider around the parade ground. The competition began. All the horses lined up at the starting of the line. "Come on, Rusty, have a go," whispered Fred. He led Rusty and Beauty to where the horses were lined up. All the horses turned and stared. "What's an old horse like you doing, taking part in a contest like this?" one of them asked disdainfully. "You won't make it past the starting line," taunted another. Rusty said nothing and took his place at the start. Then they were off down the field. Rusty felt his heart pounding and his feet fly like never before, but try as he might, he just couldn't keep up with the others and came in last. "What did you expect?" snotted the other horses, turning their backs on poor old Rusty. However, Rusty was not downcast. Speed isn't everything, he said to himself. Now it was time for the test of strength. One by one, the horses took it in turns to pull the carriage. When it was Rusty's turn, he tried his best. He felt every muscle in his aching body strain as he slowly pulled the carriage along. Not a hope, declared the other horses. Strength isn't everything, said Rusty to himself. Next, it was time for the trotting competition. I shall ride each horse in turn, declared the king. He climbed up on to the first horse, but it bolted so fast that the king was left hanging by the stirrups. The next horse lifted his legs so high that he threw the king right up in the air, and he might have hurt himself badly if he hadn't been caught by one of his courtiers. The next horse was so nervous about carrying the king that his teeth chattered, and the king had to put his fingers in his ears. Then it was Beauty's turn, and she carried the king magnificently until she stumbled at the end. At last, it was Rusty's turn. The other horses sniggered. Let's see that old horse make a fool of himself. Rusty carried the king quite slowly and steadily, making sure he picked his feet up carefully so that His Royal Highness would not be jolted. Thank you for a most pleasant ride, said the king, dismounting. There was a hush as the horses and their owners awaited the result of the contest. I have decided, announced the king, that Rusty is the winner. Not only did he give me a most comfortable ride, but he accepted his other defeats with dignity. Speed and strength are not everything, you know. Rusty and Fred were overjoyed, and even Beauty offered her congratulations. Though I might have won if I hadn't stumbled, she muttered. So Rusty proudly pulled the king's carriage that evening, and he made such a good job of it that the king asked him if he would do it again the following year. Then the king asked Fred if his daughter could ride Beauty from time to time. He even gave Fred a bag of gold to pay for the horses' upkeep. So the three of them were happy as they never had been before, as they returned home to the farm that night. Hope you enjoyed this story. Now it's time to say goodbye and good night. See you tomorrow with another bedtime story.